Okay, so I think we're more or less ready to get this show on the road. I'm just configuring a second laptop to watch the stream alongside me while I'm flying, so I can keep an eye on comments along the way. And there we go. I now have the live stream up and running. I'm not taking off just yet. Remind me later. I've just got a Windows notification popped up on the laptop. I'm going to ignore it for the moment. And I'll throw a comment in the taking off in a few minutes. And the reason I'm taking off in a few minutes is because I'm going to have to go and get the aircraft ready. Okay, we're going to fly to Sandefjord. We're at Stansted in London, or on the north side of London. EGSS, Echo Golf Sierra Sierra, Stansted Airport. And we are going to fly to Sandefjord, to the ENTO airfield. ENTO, Echo November Tango Oscar. As you can see, the aircraft is very cold and very dark at the moment on the ground in London. Let's go and have a look at our flight plan. We'll just close Photoscape down. I was just editing the photograph to put on the live stream. We'll also close Discord, so we've got no other things running at all. Okay, so you can see here's our flight plan. We are in Stansted in London. We are going to fly the BKY2S standard instrument departure. We're going to fly several waypoints along the way, then we're going to fly the SOS 70 star standard approach route into Sandefjord with ILS into runway 36. And yeah, that's all there is to it really. There's a number of waypoints, so we will fly along the way. So we'll get all of this programmed into the Airbus and let the Airbus do its magic. Okay, first things first in the Airbus. Go and turn the batteries on. We do have external power available. We will use it. We will then go and turn on the auxiliary power unit. You can hear that coming up to speed. We will then switch on the inertial navigation system. Turn on the crew air supply. And before we do anything else, we'll go and program the FMC. So all of this stuff is booting up and warming up around us. Before we program the FMC, let's go and turn some lights on inside the aircraft. So we want the dome light on, is the easiest way to get some light. There we go. Okay, the MCDU, the flight management computer of the Airbus A320. So it comes up with a status page, we clear the messages, we go into initialization. So we're going from EGSS to ENTO. We key that in and come back. Flight number. Shall we make V virtual flight online 123 VFO 123 is our flight number. Cost index, we're going to go 99 and throw it in there. Flight level, we will fly at 35,000 feet, so 350. We're travelling east, which is typically odd numbers on an instrument flight. We're flying at night, remember, so we're not going to be doing this visually. So that's most of that stuff done. On the next page we can see our zero fuel weight, which we can fill in automatically. We're not going to do fuel planning, but we are going to go in here and say how much fuel we're putting in. So we'll go and choose 40% in the aircraft. We'll have loads left. Fuel, max allowable fuel. So we've got 8,000 pounds of fuel. 8,100 we'll say. And close that. So interestingly in here, yeah, we can't just press the key next to it. So it wants to block fuel. I'm not sure what units it wants them in. Probably 8. I would imagine. 8,000. There we go. Okay, so if we go into the performance pages now, we can put in the rest of the numbers. So flaps, if we put flaps in first, then we can calculate the rotate speeds automatically. So we're going to have flap setting 1 for takeoff. We'll key that straight in. We're not going to bother with the flex to temp, but then we should be able to pre-calculate, yeah, the rotate speeds. So we got V1, VR, and V2. We can put a transition altitude in. We're not going to bother. We're not doing this very strictly, so it's not anything to really worry about. We haven't got ATC watching us. We're just flying the flight. Okay, so let's go and complete that flight plan. So if we go and look, we've got EGSS to ENTO. So departing from EGSS, we're going to be taking off runway 04 and the BKY2S standard instrument departure. And we will insert that into the flight plan, and it's done it. There are the various waypoints. So then if we scroll down to the end of the flight plan, you can see a discontinuity and then ENTO. So there's the end of the standard instrument departure, and there is our arrival at ENTO. So we go and click on ENTO, and we put our arrival details in. We're coming in ILS runway 36, and I think it's the ESOS 7. Let's just check. ESOS 7T, that agrees with little nav map. ESOS 7T. So that's our standard approach route into ENTO. SOC is the, yeah, it's not option. We don't have any vires or anything, so we're just going to insert that straight in. Now we can go and look at our flight plan again and see if we have any discontinuities along the way. SOC. So we can see the distance of each part of the route along the way here. Also the time required to get there, 1 hour 21. So D358G is the end of our standard instrument departure, and then ASOC is the beginning of the, you can see it here, look on the chart, is the beginning of the standard approach routes. So we want to put some waypoints in between. So we'll start with LNAB. So ELNAB. And we insert that on top of ASOC, which puts it in front of it. Then we want ROLUM. And I've put that in the wrong place, haven't I? Yes, I have. So let's clear that one back out. And we'll do that again. ROLUM. In front of ASOC. Then DICAT. D-I-K-A-T. Goes in front of ASOC. Then we need to push the page up slightly. Then NASU. Goes in front of ASOC. Then RASVI. R-A-S-V-I. Then a NERDO goes in front of ASOC. N-E-R-D-O. Scroll up a bit further. And then ARTOR. A-R-T-O-R. A-R-T-O-R. Goes in front of ASOC. and then we can scroll this up and we can get rid of that discontinuity, because that was where we removed a waypoint previously, and that should mean we get a solid line on the chart, and we do, meaning that there are no discontinuities, otherwise it would be a dotted line, an incomplete flight plan. Okay, let's go and get those engines started. So the APU is on. We can confirm this by knowing that this screen has changed, otherwise it would be showing us the APU screen, and you can see it is generating a charge. Therefore it is also generating air pressure. So we can turn on the APU bleed. We can go and turn on the fuel pumps, and we can scroll down here and we can turn the engines to start mode, and we can move engines 1 and engines 2 to start, and you will see the N2 numbers climbing for the engines. We're also going to move the flaps to takeoff position. We're shortcutting some of these things and doing them out of order. We would really push back before we start the engines normally. We're going to go and turn on TCAS. And we're pretty good to go. We can switch this back to all mode, which brings you around all the various different status pages. It's amazing the level of functionality they've built into this now. Really is good. Okay, so let's go and lock. Oops, clicked on that in the wrong place. Done it again. We just locked the cabin door behind us, so nobody can climb in and ruin our flight for us. So we're taking off runway 04, which is 45 degrees actually. So we're going to go and program that in. Oh, it's 42. Yes, this has pre-programmed itself. So we'll also go and give this a selected airspeed that's preset before we get to the runway in case we need it. So we'll go for 220. Then put it back into managed mode. Put this back into managed mode. I'm going to select an initial altitude for climb out of 16,000 feet. We are going to press B to pre-program the QNH to the local atmospheric pressure, which calibrates the altimeter. Okay, lights. Strobe lights on. Beacon lights on. Logo lights on. Takeoff lights on the nose. Landing lights on, which we will use for takeoff, just so we can see where we're going. So you can see now we are painting the building with light in front of us. We can go to plan mode on the HSI. Is the HSI? Is that what it's called? I can never remember the name of it. The primary flight display. And we can skip through the waypoints to have a look at them. See where we're going. Okay, so let's go and put that back into arc mode so it reflects where we actually are. Let's go and have a look outside. And we're going to press Shift and P to cause a pushback. We're going to delete somebody that spammed the live chat channel already. Okay, so we're just getting ready to depart from Stansted. So we're going to be pushing back very soon. Off the parking brake. So the tug is pushing us back. The wing has just missed catering truck. So if we go and look at the other side of the aircraft, there's the beginning of the runway, but we're going to the other end. We're going to taxi all the way down and take off runway 4. So we'll just get this tug to push us out into the middle of the paved area, and then we'll be good to go. Okay, tug is let go. Parking brake back on, wait for the tug to clear. And there it goes. Parking brake back off. So we've still got a couple of things to do in the cockpit. APU off. Whoops. APU off. APU bleed off. So we're going to taxi out to runway 04. Shouldn't take too long. There was an... I'll wait till I've turned the corner. We've got a couple of things to do. We've got to go and turn the predictive wind shear off. Oh, sorry, on, not off. What am I talking about? Hopefully this should be a nice smooth flight. Just in case we get any icing, I'm going to turn on some measures to prevent that. And then down here we're going to go and turn on the wind shear, so that's gone away. This is Stansted Airport. Okay, so we're going to join the runway here. Just slow down. It's a while since I've done a night flight. I keep forgetting that they've made the fly-by-wire Airbus a bit more realistic, where the tiller takes time to respond because the servo's driving the steering. the nose wheel steering takes time to respond to the direction you want to go. So you have to be slow and methodical about making steering changes, unlike that. Okay. Okay, we're going for full throttle. Got the centre line. Rotate, gear up, autopilot on, retract the throttles to speed mode, climb mode as it is, so the throttles have been retracted to the central detent, which means the automatic throttle will now work in managed mode, headings on managed mode, climbing on managed mode to 16,000 feet, and following the standard instrument departure programmed into the autopilot. So we're good to go. There we go, and the aircraft is doing its thing. And that's about it in the Airbus, and we come back in an hour's time. Obviously, in the real world, the pilot is responding to air traffic control and potentially making changes very quickly in response to instructions from air traffic control, but in the simulator world we haven't got air traffic control in existence tonight, so we're just flying for the fun of flying. So we're just coming up to 5,000 feet on the standard instrument departure, so although we've got managed mode taking us to 16,000 feet, it's not going to do that until it leaves the altitude restrictions of the standard instrument departure. So we could all very well take this straight up to 35,000 feet to our cruise altitude and say get there by managed mode please, and it will just get on with it. So you notice it's still holding at 5,000 feet. That's because that's the altitude restriction of this standard instrument departure. So if you have a look around in the sky, see London stretched out behind us. London is vast. Okay, why am I overspeeding? I forgot to retract the flaps. It's a bit of a trademark that I forget something along the way. To be honest, it was just the leading edge slats. But there you go. It's going to be interesting to see what the autopilot does, if this is a rendering issue with the FlyByWire A320 or if it handles it properly. Looks like it's got some sort of anomaly going on, so to prevent that from causing us a problem, what we could do is do a direct to D358 to the next one basically. So if we go direct to on the MCDU, C might cause a problem. Let's go direct to G and insert that change to the flight plan, and it's smoothed it out. So there's obviously a bug in the fly-by-wire Airbus somewhere. That might have only been a rendering issue, but I'm worried that the autopilot might have tried to fly that and had a fit trying to do it. So we've prevented that from happening by skipping that step. And now we are climbing. We've gone through 10,000 feet. We go to standard barometric pressure and we're good to go. That is pretty much it. That's all of our work done. We are now high enough we don't need to worry about the ice so much. So we shouldn't anyway, because there's no clouds around. It's just cold. We'll see how it goes when we get to Norway. And somebody else to get rid of. Hide the user from the channel. Gone. Okay, so I will arrange a nice view for the aeroplane. Let's go and have a look in the camera views. Showcase. go for one of the fixed camera views, shall we? Lay the plane. Ooh, that's an interesting one. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, that's looking from the window, 14, yeah, there you go, that's a nice view along the way. So let's pretend to be a passenger for the next half an hour and we'll see how we get on. We'll pull up the map so we have a clue of where we are along the way. Oh, that's not the map, that's the weather. There's the map. I don't know why whenever I see the map I think of Dora the Explorer and this silly song singing I'm the map, I'm the map. I have 3 daughters. It explains everything. Okay, so we are slowly leaving the United Kingdom. We will be out over the ocean fairly soon. We go north over the Wash, that area of the map is called. Go and have a look. So we're just leaving. At the moment we are flying over Cambridge. Going to go alongside this inlet in the coast is called the Wash. On our way to Elnab. So if we get this right, and I can't remember the keys to do this, there we go, the insert key does it. Get rid of this display. If we go and look on the MCDU, we can see where we are at the moment. If I just pull up the flight plan page, it gives you an ETA to each part of the journey. So we'll be expecting to arrive at ENTO in 1 hour 59 minutes. Distance 549 miles, 48 miles. It's going to be a pretty close thing on the fuel. We'll see how we go. How's the wind? We've got a headwind, which is not going to help us. Okay, I'm going to cheat at this point, which is thoroughly... Ah, interesting, look, the fuel has lowered itself. So I'm going to give this plane quite a lot more fuel. And you'll probably see the EFOB. I'm not quite sure why is that doing that. Is this a new feature of the A320 that it will not allow you to fill the tanks? That's interesting. So it's resetting itself back. Do we have to do this through the electronic flight book? Yes, we do. Can we just change it? Apparently not. Okay, we may have some problems. We'll see how we go. We may have enough fuel. This is saying we're just about going to do it. But with the headwind, probably not. So I'm going to change the weather to give us a fighting chance. And just give us a few clouds. At the moment we are climbing, we're getting closer and closer to no fuel left when we get to the end. So we'll wait and see how we go. Could be dicey at the other end though. So it completely ignored setting the fuel through the menu. I should have done it in the iPad on the side of the cockpit. It's going to be cutting it extremely fine. I guess we could cheat and manipulate the weather and give ourselves a tailwind, but that really would be cheating, wouldn't it? We'll stop climbing in a moment and then start cruising, so the fuel burn on the engines will just... This takes no account of the fuel burn, so once we're in cruise the percentage will drop on the engines. When you've got a couple, well, 1,500 feet to go, and we'll be at target altitude, and we'll start cruising and we'll start making efficiencies on the fuel, so we should be fine. At the detailed fuel burn page, or engines even. I think engines will give us the same display as that one. Okay, we've just reached altitude, yeah, and the engines are winding back. See what happens. So let's increase the range on the primary flight display. See the other waypoints we programmed in are stretched out across the next 300 miles. We just need to keep an eye on the fuel bill. We can do the refuel while we're in the air. Let's have a look. Will it let us? Fuel. Refuel tank instant. we want to go to about that much, please. Go. Hurrah! Magic! We just filled the fuel up out of nowhere, and you will see now, yeah, we're going to have 1,000 left. No more panic. Let's go and put the weather back to live. Live weather, please. And we're overspeeding. So the aircraft is slowing down. It's not dangerously overspeeding, it's just warning us that beyond safe limits. So it'll go quiet in a moment. There it goes. So the managed throttle is decelerating for us back to the target airspeed of about 265 knots indicated. Mach 0.76-ish, usually. 77 maybe. Yeah, it's thereabouts. And now it's going to accelerate the engines again to try and get us back to there. It's being a bit slow about doing it. So you can see the percentages coming up on the turbofans. Very good. So we were able to cheat and fill a little bit more fuel up. That was my bad for filling up via this menu while we were on the ground. I should have done it via the pad. So that's a good lesson for next time. At least we don't have any passengers on board. Well, not technically, because I didn't let them board onto the aeroplane. Okay, so we can have different views on the two different displays, so we may as well take advantage of doing that. We'll put this one in nav mode and leave the other one in arc mode. We'll give this a bit more range so we can see what's coming next. That's quite cool. Cruising 35,000 feet en route to Sandefjord in Norway from Stansted in the United Kingdom. If we go and have a look on the map, we can see where we are. We've just left Stansted, followed the BKY2S departure, and we are following a series of waypoints out across the North Sea towards Sandefjord in Norway, just south of Oslo. About 35,000 feet. Mach 0.78. 265 knots indicated airspeed. Everything's looking good. If you wanted to join me, I'm on the Southeast Asia server. I'm cruising quite happily high above the clouds. Those patches you can see below are wind farms in the ocean. So those are the anti-collision lights on top of the windmills. We have still got a light on, we shouldn't have one. What light have we not switched off? Ah. Nope. Oh, it's the landing lights that have those. There we go. only ever been to Stansted once, and that was to meet my other half when she came back from a holiday when we were first going out into Egypt. She flew back into Stansted. Turkey maybe, I can't remember. Okay. So it's all looking good. Oh, there's another farm of windmills coming past here. Huge patch of them. My word, they've been busy building windmills out in the North Sea. So I'm going to leave a pretty camera view on the screen. I'm going to go and grab a drink and I'll be back fairly soon. We've got quite a long way to go yet, so I'm just going to be sat here smoothly flying along for quite some time. The aircraft doing its thing. Let's get more of the stars in view, they're quite cool, aren't they? Yeah, I know, it's a bit noisy outside. If I go on the inside, then you can hear me a lot better. You don't really need to be able to hear me though. So you spent the night in, this is Kilo Bravo Alpha, you spent the night in Stansted thanks to Ryanair. I'm sure you're not the only person that's done a similar thing for Ryanair in their time. They probably charged you to lie on the ground, didn't they? I will admit I've been very, very lucky in recent flights with work. I've been able to use Lufthansa and they were fantastic. They're a bit more expensive than some of the budget airlines, but it was all paid for on expenses and it was really, really good. But I understand that obviously following the pandemic a lot of the airline experiences have changed, so yeah, it remains to be seen what it's going to be like when we all go back to flying again, or if we go back to flying. I remember before the pandemic started, there were all the scare stories were that the fossil fuels used to make air travel possible were going to make aviation fuel impossibly expensive. So who knows what's going to happen with the future of air travel. There's an awful lot of the big petroleum companies that are working out of the Emirates and places like that. They're all slowly converting over to new technologies and moving away from the fuel industry entirely, and they have to. I went into and out of the Frankfurt one time. I went into and out of Frankfurt so many times. For a couple of years I worked on a work contract that took me there probably every 2 or 3 weeks. For a time it was every other week. So I got to know Frankfurt Airport backwards. Also London Heathrow Airport backwards. I probably stayed in most of the hotels in the central Frankfurt area and some of the extra ones, because Frankfurt's notorious that when the car show or home building shows turn up in town, the hotels fill up and there's nowhere to stay. Just keeping an eye on this sim. I'm just wondering if it's paused or crashed or anything, because it looks so much. I'm going to zoom in so we can actually see waypoints moving, because otherwise it's easy to think it's crashed. So I'll put the arc display on here on the longer view. There we go. And we can actually see the waypoints moving on this one. Have I ever been to Raunheim? Where's Raunheim? Corner Steakhouse. No, I haven't. I've never been to Raunheim. NH Hotel in Raunheim. No, unfortunately not. Sounds like you have a story to do with it though. You cook your steak on a lava rock at your table. Wow, that sounds interesting. I think the most interesting place I went to in Frankfurt is called Basler Eck, and it's down by the River Main, and it's full of memorabilia of the various airlines. It's a very basic, small little tavern. They sell kind of basic meat and two veg kind of meals, traditional German, potatoes, vegetables, meat on the plate, and various sausages. And I went there specifically because it's one of the few places I could find nearby, certainly, that sold traditional German food. Because obviously a big bustling city like Frankfurt has got every cuisine in the world, but I just wanted some basic food, and it's like anywhere, it's impossible to find it. So yeah, Basler Eck was this tiny little tavern near where I was staying in a hotel, and I went and sought it out. And all of the walls of the bar are completely covered with memorabilia of the various airlines, and it's because the flight crews all eat there. Again, because it's one of the few places you can get a really filling, normal meal, with really kind of unctuous comfort food. But yeah, so every wall of the place was completely covered in the badges and stickers of the various airlines, including lots of airlines that don't exist anymore, like TWA and Pan Am and lots of others. But yeah, it was really, really fascinating to sit in there and have a couple of pints of German beer, have a traditional meal, and surrounded by really, an international crowd in there. It was really interesting. I'm just trying to think some of the other places. A lot of the times I stayed in Frankfurt, I ate at a Japanese, like a fusion bar, I guess you'd call it these days. It was trying to look like Japanese food, but kind of wasn't. It was fine. It was really, really nice. It was called Mosh Mosh. I don't think they exist outside of Germany. But it was interesting. It was reasonable price. You got plenty for your money. It was clean, well cooked. I ended up staying in the Ibis hotels because there was one that had just been refurbished across the road from where I was staying. So I stayed in Ibis a lot, mainly on price, but also because it was so close to the office. And it was clean and tidy because it, like I say, it had just been refurbished. But along the time I was there, I also stayed in some real dives and some really, really nice places. So when all the hotel rooms sold out, one time there was a car show in town, and I got to stay in a suite that cost more per night than I would usually pay for a week. But the client absolutely needed me on site that week, so there was no choice. And so I was in a suite of I want to say the nicest hotel, certainly the most upmarket hotel, but actually it was one of the worst experiences, where the staff wouldn't look at you twice. It was just really kind of detached. I lived near Aiken. Is it Aiken or Aachen for 5 years in the Netherlands, in America. I've never been to Holland. I know a few people from Holland, but I've never actually been there myself, and it's strange because it's so close. Been to Paris a few times, been to Spain, been to Italy. I've been most of the close countries to the UK in Europe, but I've never been to Holland. Where else have we been? I've been to Finland. I've not been to Norway. I've not been to Denmark either. The bed and breakfast in Germany are amazing, at least the ones I stayed in. Yeah, they really are. And they're clean and tidy, they give you loads, they're reasonably priced. And the continental breakfasts in Germany, it's just all cold meat and bread, isn't it? But it's really cool, and the coffee's good as well. They don't really understand tea. I guess that's a very British thing though. But yeah, you can pretty much get a black coffee anywhere you go, and obviously beer everywhere. The thing that really interested me in Frankfurt were people on the streets on an evening with bars or off licenses that sell through a hatch directly onto the pavement, and people would gather there. And although I guess you're not supposed to drink on the pavement in the city, people did, and the police didn't take any notice. So yeah, it was interesting to see social gatherings happening just on the pavement in the city outside the hatch of an off license. So someone else is saying they lived in Landgraf, Haarlem Maastricht. Yeah, spent 3 Christmases in Spain. Frustruck, however you spell it. It's funny, one time when I was staying in Frankfurt I couldn't get into any of the usual hotels, so I picked one randomly that was a decent price, and didn't realise until I was actually staying there. And everybody jokes about this and kind of rolls their eyes, but honestly didn't realise until I was there and looked out of the window, and well, even then I didn't notice. When I arrived I went walking round to figure out what was nearby, and I was right in the middle of the red light district. And I don't know if anybody knows this watching the stream, but in Germany prostitution is legal. So yeah, there were various places plying their trade, quite, very respectable and very clean and tidy and very nice people working in them. But yeah, it was an eye-opener. Before anybody wonders what I got up to, I couldn't afford to do anything like that. The budget for work was quite restrictive, and I have a young family. There's no way anything like that's ever going to happen. Stayed on the American base quite a bit. Many through Germany, yeah. Where I grew up, near RAF Brize Norton in Oxfordshire in the UK, in the 1980s, RAF Brize Norton was an American airbase. The late 70s through to the mid 80s, I think. So lots of the children I went to school with were American Forces kids. So we all used to hang out together, and now and again, before all the troubles happened with Ireland and various other international countries, access to the base was quite open. So as kids we would go on and off to go and meet our friends on our bicycles. And yeah, the world within the American airbase was completely alien to us. They had a bowling alley, they had cinemas, they had their own shops. It was, and of course they dealt in dollars on the base, which was completely and utterly alien to us. Some of the families lived in the town though. They chose to live in the town to get the experience of living in another country for their children. So we had several children living in our street that were Americans, and became good friends with them. I remember when I was in junior school, several kids came in, obviously with the latest draft of airmen, and they had obviously a very, very different life experience to the rest of us, and I remember the teachers really struggling with them. But you know, we all made firm friends instantly, as kids do. Ah, so your wife was a teacher in the Netherlands. Okay, how's the aircraft doing? Cruising along, Mach 0.77, 265 indicated, still at 35,000 feet. Something I didn't note about on the climb out, when we went through 10,000 feet, we switched the barometric pressure over to 2992, which is the standard barometric pressure, which you can see on STD on the master control panel over the top of the cockpit. There's a NATO base in Britain. There's NATO airbase in Gallenkirchen. It's very strange having this conversation because you're seeing the live stream about a minute after I've broadcast it, so I'm talking and there's this huge delay between you answering things and me rabbiting on about stuff. Hopefully when people see this on YouTube it will make a little bit of sense at least. Just out of interest, I think I checked this when we took off. I'm just going to go and check the flight plan and make sure there are no discontinuities in it. So no brakes in the plan. No, they're not. It should be good. So you can see it's got the deceleration and the descent. It's got altitudes plugged in. So it should have top of descent in here as well if we go and wind backwards. No, it hasn't actually. Okay, so we just need to make sure we get down to 5,000 feet for Nenix. Let's go and have a look at the waypoints and see where that is. Above 5,000 feet for Nenix. We don't want to be too far above it because we need to get down very quickly then to 3,000 feet for the entrance into the ILS for runway 36 at ENTO, or a Torp I should say. That's the actual name of the airfield. The reason I always call it Sandefjord is because if you look at where Torp is, it's just a couple of miles away from Sandefjord. I know a girl that lives in Sandefjord. They've got this amazing feature in the town. You can't see it on this map. It's a whaling boat on the middle of the roundabout. It's a fantastic piece of artwork with, you know, kind of the dramatic scene with the sailors holding the spears up, or harpoons I should say. But yeah, it's a stunning piece of artwork in the centre of Sandefjord. So, Kilo Bravo Alpha. I've not flown the airline as much at all. I mostly fly the Cessna 172. Yeah, I kind of fly everything in flight sim. I've been at this for far too long and amassed quite a lot of knowledge of the various different planes. It's going to be interesting because at the moment the only real decent airliner in here is the A320. There is the CRJ as well, the Bombardier plane, but it's good. It's not as good as the FlyByWire A320 or the FlyByWire A320 is the A320 from FlightSim with a mod that makes it better. The CRJ is from Aerosoft. There's another, I'm just trying to think through the aircraft that we've got that we can use these days. Those are the two main ones. There's a DC-6, but it's a prop plane, and it's from the 1950s. The Douglas DC-6. That's really amazing. It's the first aircraft that PMDG have released for FlightSim. But yeah, there is a 737 coming, a Boeing 737 from PMDG. It's not out yet. It's probably going to be another few months yet. but that's going to be fun. I got used to flying the 737 in X-Plane. There's a mod for X-Plane called the Zebo mod that provides a study level 737, and yeah, I got to know that inside out over time. It's good fun. Yeah, the fly-by-wires earlier, yeah, I'll show you some of the tricks it can do. So we can zoom in down here onto the MCDU, the flight management computer, and we can go into the MCDU menu and go to the ATSU submenu. I love doing this. Go to the AOC menu and we can do a weather request over the radio, over the digital radio system. And so it's pre-programmed with the airfields that we are flying from and to, and we can send the weather request. And we will get a message pop up over here in a moment saying a message has been received. So we'll hang on for a few moments, wait for that notification. There we go, company message. So then if we come back down here, we can see we have to go back out of here. So return to the AOC menu, go to received messages, and that gives us the weather for the departure and the destination airfield, and we can print it out. And there's a little printer on the central console of the A320, and it's printing out the weather report for us. How cool is that? And so you can, obviously it's backwards, so you'd have to crane over. You can tear it off, but they've simulated that by doing a click of the mouse. And when you click on the piece of paper, it appears over here. And then when you look over here, there's the meteorological data for the destination. So it's like ENTO at 2100, 20 minutes, 2100 basically, 280 degrees, 9 knots the wind is. And the QNH at the destination airfield is 1021. So that's the barometric pressure readout. How cool is that though? That the printer works. There's lots of other bits and pieces hidden away inside this system. You can program your flights in SimBrief, and then you can go into the... Oh, I forget where this is. Hang on a second. Yeah, some of this isn't in here. So clear off that message. Let's go back to the MCDU menu. So ATSU, data link. AOC, init. Yeah, I'm not going to meddle too much. I've forgotten exactly where it is, but you can load flight plans from SimBrief directly into the aircraft when you're configuring it on the ground, which is quite cool. I'd have to look up how to do it. I always forget the process for doing it. That's why I always tend to program the A320 by hand. But yeah, so things that the fly-by-wire mod gives you is, for example, all of the buttons for the ECAM screen work, and they reflect the data accurately. So we've got a PSI problem going on with the engines. Why is that? I've not got any warnings. Why have we got low PSI? Let's have a look through some of the other screens. Maybe due to the cold. Let's go and turn the anti-icing on and see if that goes away. That's a bit worrying. there's the cabin pressure, there's the electrical systems, hydraulic systems, the fuel, the auxiliary power unit. Obviously it's switched off at the moment. Air conditioning, the doors, the wheels, the flight control systems, and then there's a mode that flicks through all of them. So we'll leave it on that screen. That's a good kind of combination cruise screen to have up. We'll leave engine anti-ice on for the moment. It's a bit odd that it appeared. Okay, so if we zoom out on this screen, you can actually see ENTO coming now. Okay, see you soon, Kilo Bravo Alpha. Yes, good chat. It's good fun. I'm going to go make that drink that I said I was going to make quite some time ago before we arrive at ENTO. Okay, let's pull the flight plan back up so we can see the estimated times. 1:58 UTC, we should be arriving at ENTO. So the time now, looking at my watch, is 1:12, so about 3/4 of an hour left on the flight plan. We'll do a little bit of planning about our descent. So based on the performance file that I've preloaded into Little Nav Map for the Airbus A320, top of departure is just short of the Nerdo waypoint, but I know for a fact we can come in a lot later than that because the A320 fly-by-wire descends a lot more steeply than this performance file illustrates. So if we add some range rings to ENTO, it's saying, yeah, so that's 100 miles out. There's a bit of a dogleg here as well in the standard instrument, the standard approach route, sorry. So I'm going to have a bit of a break for a few minutes. I'm going to go quiet, but I'll leave the aircraft on the screen for a while. And I'm going to come back. I'm just looking at the waypoints to know when we're going to get there. 1:40. I'll come back at about 1:40. So in about 20 minutes time by the look of it. And then we'll manage the descent into ENTO. So let's put on a nice view approaching Rosby. We're about 150 miles out from Torp. ENTO is the code, ICAO code. Echo November, Tango Oscar, which is the airfield just north of Sandefjord, southern. Let's have a look inside at the systems, see how everything's looking. Okay, so 160 miles out. Ice not detected, which is looking a lot better then. Just checking stats around the place. So still looking for arrival at ENTO 159. Fuel and block number is still showing a strange number. Let's go and look at the burn down. Yeah, let's go and we're going to cheat again. This is very odd. Fill the fuel back up. There we go, that's better. Remind me next time to do some fuel calculations before I take off. It's as I've told people this week several times though. One of the great things about simulators is you get to learn by your mistakes without causing any harm. So that's the major takeaway from a simulator. Unless you're being assessed and you don't have, you're going to have procedures to learn. And you're going to abide by those procedures and checks and balances. Simulators are here to have fun with. And I think too many people get a bit too tied up in pointing the finger at people saying you're not doing this right and that's not responsible. I recorded a general aviation video messing around with the weather in Flight Simulator many months ago, where I introduced very, very strong crosswinds to a Cessna on the ground and was experimenting to see what you could get away with without crashing the aircraft. And somebody wrote a lengthy comment saying I was a bad influence and I was a really bad example to other people, and what I'd done would have caused no end of damage and destruction to property and hardware and life and limb, and I just couldn't quite believe what I was reading and had to kind of reply and say it's a simulator, it's a video game. This is not real. There's a line you can cross, and yes, it's good fun to try and be realistic, and sometimes if you're doing a group flight with others, then yes, you would try to do things realistically. But otherwise, it's here to have fun with, and yeah, you might make mistakes and you might overlook things when you're just casually messing around with the simulator, but you can easily lose the sense of fun, I think, if you cross the line, starting to treat it like it's the real world. It really isn't. Okay, let's have a look down on the primary flight display. One of the major benefits of running the fly-by-wire mod on the A320 and Flight Simulator is the rendering of this primary flight display has been completely rewritten, and well, all of the displays. So if you compare not just the accuracy of what is drawn, but the way in which the symbology reacts to what's going on in the world is transformed. The one thing I would say is massively different though than a real Airbus, or should I say a study level Airbus, which this is not, is the flight model of the aircraft is still massively wrong. In fact, that's a bit of an oversight as well. The fly-by-wire modelling of the Airbus is wrong. If you were to compare the FlyByWire A320, for example, against the Tollis Airbus in X-Plane, you would see the difference instantly as soon as you got control of the aircraft. In the real Airbus, you're kind of controlling the flight director when you use the stick. You're directing the aircraft where you want it to go. So say you push left on the stick, the aircraft will start banking. The nose will not drop. The aircraft will feed the elevator in to keep the nose at the attitude it was at. So you can very much direct the aircraft through the air with the stick. You don't really have to worry at all about the aerodynamic forces. The aeroplane does all of that for you. And it's almost like you have to unlearn flying, which is a real struggle at first. Okay, so we're 120 miles out from Sandefjord. Let's go and look and see if there are any limits. I think we just need to be above 5,000 at Nenix. Yeah, we do. So we'll give it another 20 miles or so, and then we'll start descending down. To start our descent. So we want to be above 5,000 feet from that first waypoint. So we'll go for 6,000. In fact, we'll do a managed descent and see how fast it wants to descend. And we can use a trick in this on nav map to see if it's far more quick than we need. So there's our elevation plot of our flight. You can see the rate at which we need to come down based on the performance of the A320. So we could come down on the top of descent marker. I'm more interested in seeing how steeply this is going to descend. So rather than go straight for 6,000, let's go for 25,000, just to see what the rate looks like. While we're doing this, I could have a look at the master control panel just to explain a few bits and pieces along the way for anybody that's not aware of how this operates. So this central section of the top of the cockpit in the A320 is the master control panel for the autopilot. So this is how you control where the plane is going while you've got the autopilot switched on. So in the real plane, you can either push these knobs in or roll them or pull them out. If you push them, that's what's known as managed mode. You can see it there, it's highlighting the speed and say managed mode. Managed mode is denoted by hyphens to do the numbers and a dot alongside the field. So we are in managed mode on the speed, we are in managed mode on the heading, and we are in managed mode on the altitude. Okay. If we were to click the bottom half of any of these controls, that's the same as pulling them, and that will do selected mode. So if I did selected mode on the airspeed, I could roll this knob to choose the airspeed I want the auto throttle to try to get to. So I could say go to selected speed mode and roll to get to 300 knots. So the marker, the target has gone to 300 on the indicated airspeed ribbon, and the engines have modified to match that. Yeah. We're almost down to 25,000 feet already. This thing has come down like a rocket. Look at that. So notice I said earlier we could come down a lot more quickly than you would typically think. So we are going to wait. We'll wait till we get to 25,000. The plane will level out, which it's doing right now. Let's zoom in a bit further on the primary flight display. So one of the huge advantages of having these screens be independent of each other is when we get closer to the destination airfield, we will leave this on arc mode, we will switch the primary display over to LS mode, which will show the symbology for the ILS. We're going to let's go and check Little Navmap actually before we get there, and let's get the details on Torp. So if we go show information for Torp airfield, what we're looking for is information on interesting. Airport, runways, nav aids, airspace, user points, logbooks. I was expecting it to show us what ILS frequencies are available. Nav aids, airspaces, user points, logbook. That's interesting. Why is it not doing it? Why is it not listing them? Normally it would be on the weather page. Interesting. Anyway, we have got the data showing up here for the ILS, and it's showing it's got DME. What I really want to know though is if it's got dual mode or not. If we hover over it, this gives us the information. It does have a bank course. That's interesting. I was looking for airfields with bank courses the other day to illustrate on the autopilot tutorial, and I couldn't find one, and we've just found one. Okay, so if we pull we can go and do a descent at the rate we want. So we'll go down to 6,000 feet, selected mode, and we'll come down. I'm just changing the vertical speed over here, 2,000 feet a minute, and we'll have a look at the plot. See what it looks like compared to the plot. So we've got 100 knot wind at the moment, which is not great, but obviously we are still at high altitude. As we descend, the wind will ebb away, or at least we hope it will. So we're descending for 6,000 feet, and it looks pretty much like it's about the right rate. So it looks like the comfortable rate to descend with the A320 is 2,000 feet a minute, based on the performance file that I downloaded. Obviously we can descend more steeply. Whether that's recommended is another matter. So we'll go and tell the passengers to put their seatbelts on. So we are now descending. I don't think there's much else to do just yet. We'll put the landing lights on when we get closer. Watching the height come down, getting ready to decelerate, and then get the flaps out, the gear down, the lights on, and then coming to land at Sandefjord, Torp, just north of Sandefjord. Shouldn't take too long, hopefully. 60 miles out. The reason there's nothing showing up on the tablet is you load it from SimBrief, and I haven't put the flight plan into SimBrief. I guess I could waste some time while we're descending and go do that. So we'll need to go and open a browser with SimBrief in it, and go to the dispatch system and do a new flight. And we are, let's say we're British Airways just for argument's sake, and we go flight number and we just make one up. We're going from EGSS to ENTO. We're using the Airbus A320, the fly-by-wire version. So it's given us this route by default, but we want to use the one we've got in Little Nav Map, so we will copy that route into the clipboard and paste it in here and analyze the route. We've got the wrong runways up here. So we took off on runway 4 and we're landing on runway 36. and it's a valid route. Okay, so what this does, if we generate the flight and say yes, this builds an operational flight plan, which is the ream of paperwork that the real flight crew would take onto an aircraft. So down here you get lots and lots and lots of information about the configuration for the aircraft, the waypoints along the way, or any restrictions, absolutely any notices to airmen about things that are happening in the vicinity. So, and astronomical data, to give you waypoints and things like that. So within the aircraft, now we've programmed it into SimBrief. We can just say fetch that from SimBrief, please. And obviously I've programmed my name into here before, so it knows who I am at SimBrief. So it's loaded the details about the flight, but more importantly, it's loaded the operational flight plan. So you've got reference to all of that data, including charts. Winds aloft, the route in, all sorts of things. And you've got the fuel showing there, we saw that earlier. So anyway, so that's the SimBrief integration in the tablet, which is quite useful, just to say you've got the operational flight plan to hand. Let's see how we're looking over here. So we're coming down a little bit early, but that's fine. That gives us a bit of a time window at Nenix to get some deceleration done. Should we start decelerating already? Where are we again? Let's have a look. We're just coming down 13,000 feet, yeah. So we need to start start decelerating for 250 knots, because we are not allowed to be faster than 250 below 10,000 feet. I'm going to zoom in again. I'm going to zoom in again on this side to match. So we're getting closer. Coming into 11,000 feet. The speed is bleeding off. If we hadn't done this, when we got to 10,000 feet, the plane would have levelled out, bled the speed off, and then carried on descending. So it would have managed it itself. We're just helping it along, giving ourselves something to do rather than watch the autopilot. Just going to hide another idiot in the chat. So we're getting close. So as we come through 10,000, we go back to a programmed barometric pressure. And this is where we can go and look at the METAR printout and say it's 1021 at the destination. Now you can see this is a different scale entirely. That's what this roller does here. So we want to change this to 1021. Okay. So we've now programmed the altimeter to have the same barometric pressure as the destination airfield. And we're heading down to 6,000 feet at 2,000 feet a minute. And we are edging closer to 250 knots. We should be there already actually. We've dropped through 10,000 feet, so I'm going to go and engage the air brakes to get us there more quickly. And you can see the rate of change has just dropped on the indicated airspeed, so we are slowly braking. Go and look outside, you can see the air brakes have extended on the wings. Let's go and look on the map, give you something to look at. We can get rid of that now, because we know we need to be at 3,000 feet for FI-36. It's all looking good. So when we make the turn, we can start bleeding speed off as well. So we'll drop 2,000 feet between Nenix and Enova. So we can start preparing that already. We'll use managed mode to get us down to 3,000 feet now. Remember, we have to be above 5,000 at Nenix, so we'll keep an eye on it. And we'll drop now to 220, or 200 even. There is a decelerate marker going on here. So through the last kind of 15 miles, the aircraft would be naturally decelerating all on its own, but we're going to slow down anyway, so we're not in such a rush to get anything done. So we're still above 5,000 feet, just about to pass Nenix. Let's zoom in again to 20 miles range. Getting closer and closer to the destination, and we can look outside now and we can actually see things out there in the dark. I think that's potentially our airfield there. This will be Sandefjord, that will be. We're pointing directly towards Sandefjord now out of the cockpit, so yeah, that's Sandefjord. It's iced up on the entrance into some of the bays. Sandefjord is to the left of Torp. So yeah, that's Sandefjord. So what's the settlement I can see over here? Oh, it might be... interesting. So we're doing the dog leg in the flight plan that we saw earlier. We can get rid of the air brakes now. I'm going to go for first level of flaps. I'm going to turn on the landing lights. Turn on the tail light to light up with who we are, a bit of company advertising. You can go outside and see that now. So the landing lights are bright. You can see them extending out in front of the plane. When we make the final turn, we will turn on or we will switch to LS mode. On the primary display. Let's slow down again. Let's go for managed speed mode. Oh, it's wanting to go faster than I want to go. I'm going back to managed mode. Okay, we're making that final turn towards the airfield. There's the airfield right out in front of us. We're directly in line with it. The aircraft will rotate out now. We'll switch this main display over to glide slope mode. And we'll switch LS on, which gives us the distance to the airfield. We're perfectly on the centre line. We're just waiting for the glide slope to appear on the side of the display. So we will start slowing down to 180 knots to begin with. See the speed falling off. $10 miles to go. Descending. Gear down. approach mode engaged. Second level of flaps. Drop to 160 knots. Back on managed speed. Going for full flaps. Switch on the second autopilot. We've now got Cat 3 dual mode engaged on the autopilot, meaning we have got auto land. So we can go and look around. We don't have to concentrate. Well, we do have to concentrate, but we don't have to fly manually onto the runway if we didn't want to. But then again, where is the fun in auto land? Let's go and do it ourselves. Autopilot off.
2,500.
So we're coming down. Let's zoom in slightly so we can see the instruments nicely. Get the mouse out of the way. So we're a little bit above the glide slope. So nose down gently. Got a 20 knot headwind coming slightly from the left, slightly above the glide slope, so we're just nosing down, easing back on the engines. Coming back onto the glide slope gently. And we're looking pretty good. So we're scanning the indicated airspeed and watching the glide slope and the localizer position. So this is the localizer, it's our lateral position relative to the runway. This is the position relative to the glide slope down to the runway, and this is indicated airspeed over here. So we're watching all of them. A little bit high, a little bit fast. We're correcting as we go. You have to remember the wind is bleeding away as well, so the situation is changing as we descend. So we're descending too fast now. Wind has dropped to 12 knots. A little bit off to the left. Just correct for that. Low. .500. So now we're visual with the runway, so we can pretty much land completely visually.
400.
And just fly it in. We're a bit low, so we can put the nose up.
300.
Can't see the markings on the runway.
100.
Throttles to idle.
40. 30. 20. 10. 5.
And we're down. Get back on the centre line. Reverse thrust. reverses off at 70 knots. Brakes, and then we turn right. Flaps up. And we leave the runway. At this point, if we had air traffic control, we would be telling them we have vacated the active runway. And we make our way back to the terminal. So I'm just going to roll back. We can go and turn off the landing lights now. Just use the taxi lights. So that wasn't bad, was it? So the way of the layout of the airfield here is in Torp. We need to cross the runway again to get back to the terminal, which we are just doing. So obviously there's no other traffic around. I'm the only person on this flight sim server in the vicinity, so go and park at the main terminal building. Back in time for tea and medals. These are obviously hangars. It's difficult to see any lights, any lines in the snow, isn't it? Let's sit up. I think this is the best we're going to have. Okay, parking brakes on. We have external power available. So external power is on. We can now shut down the engines. And the crossfeed will automatically cross over, and these will come back up. That's interesting. I'm sure I switched over. Maybe there's a bug there. But anyway, yes, so in the Airbus you can just go through and switch things back off again, which doesn't take long. The interesting thing about the layout of the Airbus is when you're configuring for flight, things that have got lights on are things that need to be dealt with, if that makes any sense. So that reset itself, didn't it? That's interesting. So off, 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 off. Turn everything off, and eventually turn, yep, that's all done. Turn the external power off, and we are cold and dark again, apart from the primary, the backup attitude indicator, which is still on for some reason. Maybe that's something. Yeah, there's odd bits of radio are still on. Very odd. Oh, we didn't turn the batteries off yet. That'll be why. Batteries are off. That's still on. Did I turn the batteries off? Yeah, they're off. Okay, we'll leave it there. Oh, it's all gone now. It just took a while for the power to deplete. So there we go. A320 fly-by-wire. Landed at Torp Airfield, just north of Sandefjord in Norway, at the end of a couple of hours night flight from Stansted in London. So there we go. I'm going to stop there, and hopefully you enjoy that. I can't believe anybody's going to sit through the whole thing, but you never know. I left the air brakes out. Oh dear. And I've switched the hydraulics off already, so I'm not putting those down right now. Anyway, I'm going to stop recording there.